Welcome everyone today. If you are new or visiting our church family, my name is Aaron. I have the privilege of being the pastor here, and we're so glad that you chose to be with us today. Let me take a moment, welcome those of you joining us online or in our cafe or all their other venues. I know there's some people joining us online today because they're freaked out over the coronavirus, and so we want to welcome you and thank you through technology that you can be here. But I just want to say something about that for just a moment. I don't know if you got the email that I sent out to the church this week. I think it came out yesterday morning. We're people of faith. We're not people of fear. You know, we walk in faith. We don't walk in fear of every little thing that comes along. Now, with that being said, we also don't take things lightly. We show concern, and we take all the precautions necessary, and we walk in wisdom. Walking in faith doesn't mean walking in foolishness. We still walk in wisdom as a church, and we go above and beyond to create a safe environment for the people that attend our church. But as followers of Christ, we choose to walk in faith and not in fear, because at the end of the day, I was looking at one of my friends posted on Instagram, and it was just the last 20 years from like the year 2000 until now. And we had 1 year, there was the Ebola virus, and there was SARS, then there was H1N1, and there was the measles, and ISIS, and the economy, and then this, and then that. You know, we should have been dead by now. Let's just be honest. Like, the world should have ended a long time ago, but we're still here. We're still going forward. We're still moving strong, and this too will pass. Now, we're going to use wisdom, and we're going to use precaution, and we're going to be smart, but we're not going to live under fear. We're going to live under faith. One of the things that God put on my heart for our church yesterday at our first Saturday prayer meeting was, you know, when you study the children of Israel in the land of Egypt during the time of the Exodus, during the plagues, you know, when the plagues fell on the nation of Egypt, none of them touched the children of Israel. So when all the diseases and the skin boils and all the different things fell on the Egyptians, the children of God were untouched. And I just believe with all of my heart that we have to choose what we're going to participate in. We can participate in the fear of the world, or we can participate in faith and being God's children. We don't have to invite everything the world invites into their life, into our life. We can walk under a different standard. We can walk under a different level of protection and a different level of favor, being children of God. And I just feel like that's who we are as people of faith. In fact, the Bible even warns you about fear. The Bible has a verse that says, "What I feared came upon me." What I feared came upon me. What does that mean? It means you can invite things into your life through fear that weren't going to happen to you in the first place. But because of fear, something is now invited to take place in your life that was never going to happen, but because of fear, you invited it to happen in your life. What I feared came upon me. And this is why we don't walk in fear, we walk in faith. Now again, faith, we still walk in wisdom. We don't walk in foolishness, but we walk in faith, not fear. So I just wanted to say that to encourage those of you that, I mean, you're obviously here, so you're walking in faith, but let's just not participate in the fear of this world. Our missionaries from China actually just got back on Saturday of this week, or was it Friday of this week? They flew in from China, and they emailed us and let us know it was one of the weirdest experiences at the airport in Shanghai, because they were the only flight that left. The airport was like a ghost town, and they were the only flight that got out. But they also told us that things on the ground in China are actually going back to normal now. It's the media makes things much, much bigger than the reality of what's actually taking place. And they said, you know, I mean, there is something happening in the world, but things are starting to go back to normal on the ground in China. And that's what they said when they got back on Friday. Well, let's jump into the message. We're beginning a brand new series called Make a Difference. Make a Difference. And it's built off of the fourth step of the vision of our church. If you're a part of our church family, one of the things that we want to communicate and want you to understand is that my job as the pastor is I'm a spiritual tour guide. One of the things you've got to figure out is whether or not you're on the right bus. Because if you get on our bus, you need to know that we have an agenda for your life. And we're not going to hide the fact that we have an agenda for your life. If you become part of our church family, we are going to try to take you somewhere. We're going to take you on a journey. We have an agenda, and the final destination on our tour, on our bus, is this stop that we call Make a Difference. Because we believe when you step in to the area of life that you were created for, and you begin to live out the purpose that God has given you, and you begin to make a difference in the lives of others, that you actually get more out of it than anything that you give to others. That yes, you're making a difference in the lives of others, but it benefits you more than it benefits the people that you're serving, because it's the greatest life you are called to live. And when it comes to making a difference, what we're building this series on is we believe it manifests in two primary ways. We call it mission and ministry. All of us are called to make a difference in mission and ministry. So all of us as children of God, as followers of Christ, as people who've made Jesus the Lord of our life, every single one of us, we have a mission here on earth. And at the very same time, we have a ministry. God doesn't give you a mission or ministry. He gives you a mission and ministry. So how do we communicate ministry? Well, the way we say it in your notes is we're saved to serve. God saves you to put you into service. He saves you, and then he equips you with gifts and talents and abilities where you have now this ability to serve one another. Jesus said, I did not come to be served, but to serve and to give my life for many. Peter says, use the gifts that God has given you to serve one another. So the way we do ministry in our church family is through the Dream Team. We believe that everyone in our church has a place on the Dream Team, a ministry where you get to serve your brothers and sisters. For example, in my family, I've got chores at home. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and in my house, there are certain responsibilities that land on my plate, certain things that nobody else in the family does. It's either assumed or it's clarified that that is my role. That is my ministry to my family. Those are the chores that I have in the house. But at the very same time that I have a ministry to my family, I also have a mission outside of the house. So I've got chores that I do in the house. I've got a responsibility to my family, to my sons and to my wife. But I also have a mission outside of the house where I go to work. I have a career. I provide. As a follower of Jesus Christ, you have both. You have the ministry. You've got the Dream Team. You've got the area where you serve your Christian brothers and sisters, but you also have a mission outside of the house. Jesus in John chapter 17 put it like this in the same way, and he's praying for us here. You know, if you study John 17, he's praying for the disciples, but he's also praying for all future disciples, meaning us today. In the same way that you gave me a mission in the world, I give them a mission. This is huge. Jesus is giving you a mission. You're not here by accident. You didn't buy that house just because it was the right fit for your family. That was a mission. God put you in that home on mission to the people around you. You didn't just happen to get that job because it was your skill set or you applied in some job application. No, God put you there as a mission. I give them a mission in the world. And then he goes on to say in John 20, as the Father has sent me, here's what it looks like to be a Christian. I am sending you. So if you're going to follow Jesus, you need to understand one of the first things Jesus is going to do is give you a mission, and he's going to send you. So in the very same way that we are saved to serve, we are saved to be sent. We all have a mission and a ministry. There is an area in the house where you have chores. You have a dream team. You have a responsibility to serve your Christian brothers and sisters, but you also have a mission outside of the house, either through a serve team or Coastline Dream Center, or maybe it's your neighborhood, your community, maybe the people that you work with. All of us have a ministry and a mission. And this is the way Jesus, he established Christianity from the very beginning like this. In Matthew chapter 4, I love the fact that Jesus first goes into their world before he invites them into his world. It says, Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee. He saw two brothers, Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. I love Matthew. Matthew's an accountant. He's a CPA, and so he likes to add little details that everyone else, like we could figure out they're fishermen because they're on the sea and they're casting nets, but he just wants to make sure you understand they're fishermen. He's just that CPA inside of Matthew. And then he said to them, follow me. So Jesus is establishing Christianity. So follow me, and if you follow me, you give your life to me, you make me the Lord of your life, you surrender to me, you become born again, you become a Christian, I'm going to make you something. I'm going to turn you into something. I'm going to make you into this. The question is, what does it mean to be a Christian? when you give your life to Jesus, Jesus says, I'm going to make... Now, some of you know the answer because you've read it before, but if you've never read it before, what do you think Jesus is going to say here? What do you think he's going to set as the foundation of our faith? What do you think he's going to set as the foundation of what it means to follow him, what it means to be a Christian? I'm going to make you holy. I'm going to make you righteous. I'm going to make you a good church person. I'm going to make you religious. I'm going to make you a good husband or a good wife. I'm going to make you a good father, a good mother. I'm going to make you a great leader. I'm going to make you organized. What is he going to make you? What is the hallmark of following him as a Christian? He says, I will make you fishers of men. If you want to know what it means to follow Jesus, you got to allow him to make you a fisher of men. Now, he didn't say this to a Bible college class. He didn't say this to a group of missionaries or a group of pastors. He said this to everyday, ordinary people. Every follower, fish. Why? Because followers fish. If you're going to follow Jesus, one of the signs that you follow Jesus is you fish. If you're not fishing, you're not following. Because Jesus put us here to fish for men, to fish for women, to fish for people who don't know him. And we're going to talk about what that really means practically and how we actually do that next week, and a whole message on personal evangelism and how to talk to people and how to share Jesus with people. But we got to understand first today that this is what we're here for. Jesus says, if you're going to come follow me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make you a fisher of men. And if you don't get that, we're not even going to move to step 2 yet. Like forget all the stuff about, how to get a better prayer life and how to read the Bible. But if you're not fishing for men, we're not even going to move beyond that. Because this is the foundation of what it means to follow. Everything we do around here is all about fishing. Everything. We as a church have a privilege to be a part of foster care intervention. If you know Emma Parks on our staff, she's an amazing young woman that just has a heart and a passion for people in need. And every month I get a report from Emma of the different people that we're helping. Last month we helped a 22-year-old young girl who has a 21-month-old baby. And she moved into her very first apartment last month, and she's trying to finish her GED, and she's got a full-time job. She didn't have any money. All of her money went to the security deposit and the first month's rent, and she had nothing moving into this apartment. And we had a privilege of the church because of your generosity to provide all of her furniture and everything she needed to move into this place and be able to build the life that she's trying to build for her and her daughter. We had a young man last month that we were able to help. He has 2 underage brothers that are going to be taken into the foster care if he can't provide for them. And so this guy in his 20s who's trying to take care of his 2 younger brothers needed a refrigerator to be able to keep his brothers at home and not lose them to the foster care system. And again, because of your generosity, we were able to provide this young man a refrigerator to keep this family together. Another story last month, and I can't really get into a lot of details, but a girl that was taken into sex trafficking as a teenager who had a baby and is breaking out of that just craziness of a life. And we're able to help her right now and walking her through this process and helping her establish her life. All of these amazing, incredible things. But what I want you to understand is it's all fishing. We're not meeting people's physical need just to be nice and caring and kind and compassionate and generous. We're meeting people's physical needs so that we can meet their spiritual need, because it's all about Jesus. I mean, think about it. What good is it to keep these 3 brothers together if they die and go to hell? What do we really accomplish? So it's not just about a refrigerator, it's about Jesus. Everything we do is fishing. As Christians, the theological term for it is called the Great Commission. It's the commander's intent. Jesus in Mark 16 says he tells them, the disciples, us, go. See, the purpose of Christianity is to go. We are to go into our world on a weekly basis, every week. Go into our workplace, go into our neighborhood, go into our gym, go into our grocery store. We are on mission. We are going as Christians into all the world to preach the good news to everyone. And anyone who believes and is baptized will be saved. But anyone who refuses to believe will be condemned. It's not our job to make people believe. It's our job to share the good news. But what this is saying is heaven and hell are very, very real. And they're very, very permanent, and they're forever. And when people die, it's one or the other. And we've got the answer. We've got the hope. It's not a great suggestion. It is a great commission. It is part of the Christian life. The Apostle Paul says the most important thing. Now, Paul knows a lot about Christianity. I mean, he wrote more than half the New Testament. All of the Christian doctrine that we use today in our life comes from the Apostle Paul. Like, he's been through it all. He's done it all. He wrote about it all. He planted churches all over the world. He pastored those churches. He got beat up for Christ, killed for Christ. I mean, twice they killed him, and he was risen from the dead. I mean, stoned, shipwrecked. I mean, the guy went through everything. So when a guy like this says the most important thing, pay attention, because he knows what he's talking about. He said, the most important thing is that I complete my mission. We are on mission as Christians. The work the Lord Jesus gave me. What is that work? To tell people the good news about God's grace. I want you to think about it. Somebody told you. Somebody told, at some point in your life, whether it was a parent, you were a little child, or it was a friend in school, or a friend, somebody somewhere told you. And there is an expectation on your life to pass it on. I want you to imagine being a medical doctor. I want you to imagine you've had a patient for many years and you develop a relationship with this person, and they come into your office and they've got this issue, and you diagnose them, and you come to find that what they have is a life-threatening disease. Like what they're dealing with right now is going to kill them. It's a life-threatening situation. But the good news is, you know there's a cure and you know there's a treatment, and if they go through the cure and the treatment, it's going to be fine. Like, they're not going to die. They're not going to have any long-term symptoms or side effects, that it's going to be very easily treated, and they're going to be fine. They're going to live out the rest of their life. But you say to yourself, I just can't bring myself to tell them they're dying. I mean, that just seems so harsh. I mean, to try to tell somebody to their face that they're dying, I mean, honestly, it seems narrow-minded. I don't want to offend them. I don't want to lose my relationship with this person by telling them that they're going to die if they don't, take this cure, or they don't take this treatment. I just can't bear to lose the relationship with them. It's so harsh and offensive and narrow-minded to tell them the truth. Do you know what we call that? We call that medical malpractice. And if you do that, you get sued for everything you're worth. Here's the question. How many of us commit spiritual malpractice every week? How many of us go to work every week committing spiritual malpractice? Because we know the person that sits next to us at work, we know they don't know Jesus. We've talked to them before. We know where they stand with God. And we know that if they died this week, they would go to hell forever. And we have the cure. We have the answer. We have the treatment, and yet we've never said anything. We know our neighbor. We know where they're at spiritually. We know that person we see at the gym. And yet we've never... How many of us are committing spiritual malpractice on a regular basis? You see, the word for this in the Bible is called evangelism. And look, I know when the pastor preaches on evangelism, everyone's like, oh no, I don't want to, that's not for me, that's not my gift, that's not what I do. It's like we're thinking of the guy, standing on the soapbox on the corner with the Turner Burns sign and the megaphone telling everyone they're going to hell. It's like, not for me, pastor. It's not what let me make it very easy for you. That's not what Jesus expects. That's not what it means to be an evangelist. The word evangelist, actually, the very first use of the word evangelist comes from where we get the modern-day marathon. If you've ever ran a modern-day marathon, that's where the word evangelist comes from. Because it goes all the way back to the Battle of Marathon, the very first that we can find in history, the very first use of this word in Greek literature. So you got the Battle of Marathon, you got the Persian army, which is much larger, much stronger than the Greek army. They should have won this battle. And if they won this battle, that was just the first step, and they would have basically destroyed all of Greece. Greece would have been enslaved. They would have been under the dominion. Everybody would have been taken. But the Greeks, against all odds, if you ever saw the movie Rise of the Empire, that's where this comes from. The Greeks, against all odds, they defeat the Persians, and they win their freedom. And they keep the Persians from invading their land. Now, the Greeks at Marathon, the Greek army realizes we got to get a messenger to Athens because everybody in Athens is freaking out because Athens knows if they lose the Battle of Marathon, they're next on the stop. And everybody in Athens is going to be enslaved. Their wives and children are going to be taken and abused. They're going to be humiliated, tortured. All sorts of bad things are going to happen. So you can imagine the fear the people of Athens are living under. Well, the Greeks win the Battle of Marathon. And this is what Greek literature says. They chose an evangelist to run. The word in Greek is evangelist, to run from Marathon to Athens, 22 miles, which is where we get the modern-day marathon. And the Greek literature says is this evangelist was to run from Marathon to Athens to proclaim the gospel. It's the Greek word evangelizo, the gospel, good news. It's where we get the Christian word gospel, good news. And here was the gospel. So he runs all the way to Athens, this evangelist, and he comes into the city and he proclaims the gospel. We fought for you. We won. You're no longer slaves. You're free. How do you think you would have felt that day? Hearing the gospel. The joy, the relief, if you hear anything else, you're not hearing gospel, you're hearing religion. You see, when Christianity is preached correctly, that's the feeling it creates. People say things when they hear the gospel for the first time, this is too good to be true. This is too good to be true because it is too good to be true. So what does it mean to be an evangelist? Because I know that word is still a little bit scary. So let me give you the word that Jesus uses instead of evangelist. Acts 1:8, you will be my witnesses. So I don't want you to think evangelist, I want you to think witness. What we are called to be is a witness. Here's the thing, God is not calling you to be a judge. God doesn't need you to judge people. God is not calling you to be a defense attorney. He doesn't need you to defend Christianity. God is not calling you to be a prosecutor. He doesn't need you to push it down people's throat. What God is calling you to be is a witness. What does a witness do? Share their side of the story. That's it. Jesus began this whole mission. He gives it us. This is what history is all about, his story. We're going to share his story with people and make history. And what you've got to understand is you are God's plan A, and there's not a plan B. That person you sit next to at work every week, you are God's plan A to their life, and there's not a plan B. Your next door neighbor, you are God's plan A, and there's not a plan B. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? It is our mission to share his story with people. So here's the question today. Why do so few of us do it? Why do we struggle with this in Christianity? Why is it so hard for us to share the good news? To tell people about Jesus? Now, the answer may surprise you because it's not what many people think. A lot of people think the answer is, well, fear. Fear keeps me from talking about Jesus, or complacency, or many different things. But the answer for why many of us struggle sharing Jesus, it comes down to vision. It's vision. See, the word vision is to be able to see clearly. The reason many of us aren't sharing the good news is because we don't see clearly. We don't have vision. We either don't see Christianity clearly, we don't see God clearly, we don't see lost people. Remember that movie, The Sixth Sense? I see dead people. We don't see dead people, or we don't see people as dead. We don't see. We don't have vision. Proverbs says like this, where there is no vision. So the areas of your life where you don't see clearly, you're going to perish. People perish. You're going to get in trouble. You're driving in the middle of the night and there's fog and limited visibility. How many know bad things can happen quick under those circumstances? Where there is no vision, people perish. People get hurt. People get shipwrecked. See, here's the problem. When you don't have a clear vision of what God wants for your life, you're going to try to do something for your life that's going to get you into trouble. And here's the best key of the day. Don't look for your own vision. Focus on the vision that God has already given all of us. God has a vision for us. It's called the Great Commission. God's up to something on earth. All throughout the Bible, you've seen the same four things over and over. God wants to get lost people saved. Save people pastored people trained, and trained people mobilized. That's why we designed our church the way we designed our church. Know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference, because that's God's vision for mankind. But if you don't have vision, you're going to miss it. Uh, there's a story in the Bible that really haunts me because it's a story of the disciples with Jesus, and something's happening, and they're with Jesus, flesh and blood, and they totally miss it. In the middle of it, they totally miss what Jesus is doing, and it makes me wonder, how many times do I miss what Jesus is doing right in the middle of it? Because I don't have vision, because I'm not seeing clearly. It's in John chapter 4. Jesus, this good Jewish rabbi is traveling back to Galilee from Jerusalem, and he decides to go through Samaria, which good Jewish rabbis don't walk through Samaria. They walk around Samaria because Samaritans were despised. They were a lower class. They were a race that the Jews wanted nothing to do with. But what I love about Jesus is all throughout the Bible, Jesus would break through the racial barriers and the racial boundaries because Jesus looked at everybody with value. He didn't look down on anybody because of the color of their skin or because of their nationality or because of their background. He valued all people. And so he sits down hungry by a well outside of a village. The disciples go into the village to look for food. And all of a sudden, this woman from the village in the middle of the afternoon comes out to the well. And she comes out in the middle of the afternoon because she's got a really bad reputation. And she wants to come out when nobody's at the well because she doesn't want to hear the ugly remarks and the nasty things that people say about her because of the life that she's lived. And all of a sudden, this Jewish rabbi begins a conversation. So not only is Jesus crossing racial boundaries, but now he's crossing gender boundaries. Because Jewish rabbis of this period didn't speak to women in public. Women were kind of considered beneath them. But again, what I love about Jesus is he valued women and he elevated women and he esteemed women. And he didn't look at women as anything less than men in the Bible. And so he begins this conversation with this woman. And to be very honest, this is one of the reasons why we know the Bible wasn't made up. Like we know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John didn't make up these stories because if you're going to make up a story and start a religion about this Jewish rabbi, this Jewish leader, this Jewish Messiah, Jesus, you would not put him in a conversation with the woman in public because you discredit the entire movement. The only reason this story is in the Bible is because it actually happened. It's not made up. And so Jesus starts a conversation with this woman and he says to her, look, you've had 5 husbands, the guy you're with now, the 6th guy, he's not the one for you. I'll be the 7th man in your life, and I'll give you water from which you'll never thirst again. Everything you've been looking for in all of these different men, I'll satisfy that area of your heart, and you'll never thirst again. And she says, man, you've got to be a prophet. You've got to be the Messiah. You've got to be who people have told us. And she has this incredible revelation about who he is. Just then, so she has this revelation. Just then, his disciples return, and they were surprised to find him talking to a woman because Jesus didn't do that. And then John does something in this story that doesn't make any sense at all. If you're ever writing a true story, one of the rules of writing a true story is you don't add details that didn't happen. And the reason you don't add details that didn't happen is because they didn't happen, right? Like it makes no sense to write something into the story that never happened. If it didn't happen, why would you write about it? But John decides to write about something that never happens. He says, no one asked, what do you want? To Jesus, or why are you talking with her? That never happened. So why is John writing about it? Like no one did it. No one actually asked that question. So why is John saying it? Because John wished somebody would have. You see, a good student knows that if your rabbi does something you don't understand, the first thing you do is you ask him why so that you can learn. But more than that, John includes that detail because he's trying to teach us something today. There's nothing insignificant in the Bible. Everything in the Bible is there for a reason. This is a very important detail. And what John is trying to say to us is that the reason they didn't ask Jesus, what do you want, is because they didn't care what Jesus wanted in that moment, because they were only thinking of what they wanted in that moment. It didn't matter to them what Jesus was interested in because they were only thinking about themselves. And here's the point. If the disciples could miss it, and Jesus is there in flesh and blood, and the disciples could miss it in that moment, is it possible for us to be completely unaware of what he's doing? in the moment and miss it. Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town, and she said to the people, "Come and see." This is the first evangelist in the entire Bible. Again, this is another reason why we know the Bible's not made up, because if the Bible was made up, they wouldn't have a woman as the very first evangelist in all of the Bible. But the very first evangelist in all the Bible is this woman. She goes to a town and she says, "Come and see." And that's what we're going to invite you to do this Easter. We're going to invite you to tell your friends, "Come and see. Could this be the Messiah? Come and see. Could this be what you're looking for?" In fact, week 5 of this series will be Palm Sunday weekend. I'm going to tell you in advance, this will be one of the best weekends all year to bring somebody that doesn't know God to church. That especially people who don't like Christianity, that's going to be the best weekend, because we're going to do an entire presentation on sex trafficking that day. And people aren't going to hear about Jesus, they're going to see Jesus in action. We got the #1 team doing human trafficking ministry in America from Arizona coming in to do a whole presentation about some of the miracles that God has been doing in Arizona. If you've ever seen the documentary on Netflix on Warren Jeffs, he was the LDS polygamist up in Colorado City. He had the 79 wives, most of them underage. He's in jail for the rest of his life for abusing these girls and marrying these underage girls. One of the girls, after he went to jail, one of the underage wives, in a court case, acquired the entire compound that he owned in Colorado City and donated it to our Phoenix Dream Center, the church that I got saved in out of Phoenix, and it's now the Colorado City Dream Center. So this compound where he used to abuse young girls is now being used to restore girls. And it's going to be one of the most powerful presentations of what it means to be on mission as a Christian. So I'm going to tell you, invite people to come and see that weekend, because it's going to be a powerful weekend to come and see, Palm Sunday weekend. Everything I ever did, could this be the Christ? Could this be everything we're looking for? They came out of the town and made their way to him. So very likely this well is right outside the city gate of a village. And the villages weren't big, 80, 100 people. So I imagine, she probably got 40, 50 people from the village coming to see Jesus, because everybody knew who she was. And she's now this evangelist, and she's a very effective evangelist because all these people are coming to Jesus. So I want you to get the picture. You got 40, 50 people coming to see Jesus right now. They're coming to see, is this the Messiah? Is this what we're waiting for? Is this what we're looking for? Meanwhile, I love the disciples because they just miss it every time. Like you got to understand what's happening. You got 40, 50 people coming to see if this is the Messiah. Like they're hungry. They're ready to get saved. They're ready to get born again. They're ready to give their life to Jesus. And all they can think about is lunch. Like they're worried about In-N-Out Burger. It's like, come on, Jesus, let's go to In-N-Out Burger. And this whole city's coming to get saved. And they're completely missing the point. The moment of everything that's taken place. Rabbi, eat something. And then Jesus does what he often does. He takes what we're thinking or what we say and he spins it into a spiritual truth. And he says to them, I've got food that you know nothing about. And we kind of understand that statement because we grew up hearing it, but they didn't understand it the first time Jesus said it. They totally missed it. Because they said to each other, could someone have brought them food? Like they're still thinking about lunch. Like all these people are coming to get saved and they're thinking about lunch. My food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. We have to be very careful that we don't get so inwardly focused that we miss the moment. We miss the mission. We miss the point of what Jesus is doing. We got to be careful that like the disciples, we may have a whole town ready to know God, but we get trapped in this inward gravitational pull towards selfishness. That we can't see what God is doing around us. We got to be careful that it might be a neighbor coming to know Jesus, a coworker, somebody that we see every week at the gym, somebody at the grocery store that checks us out every week. But I've got kids at home and I'm trying to get them through school and we've got hobbies as a family and we've got a vacation coming up and there's just a lot going on in my own world right now that I just can't look at this right now because there's a lot going on right here. We got to be careful. Jesus says something monumental. He says, do you not say 4 months more and then the harvest? And that was a colloquialism for procrastination. I tell you, remember the problem, vision, where there is no vision, the people, I tell you, open your eyes. See, the problem is vision. Open your eyes and look at the fields. They're ripe for harvest. See, Jesus identified the problem. We don't see what Jesus sees. We're not looking at what Jesus is looking at. I've been diagnosed by the optometrist as being nearsighted, which is a funny diagnosis because I have no problem seeing the near. Like, the near is just fine for me. Like I see everything near really, really well. What I struggle with is farsightedness. Like, I can't see anything at a distance. Like, I can't read, scoreboards at a game or street signs because I'm, like I struggle seeing the far, but I can see the near really, really well. So I put these glasses on, and all of a sudden, everything in the back of the room becomes HD, and I can actually see who's in church today. See, most Sundays, like I see the length on my iPad, I see the little, the wrinkles in the carpet up here. But beyond the second row, it's like what the guy in the Bible says, I see people like trees. It's so funny to me. People email me and they say things like, you are looking right at me. I was like, no, I see people like trees. Like, everyone looks like a tree past the second row. Perfect, not perfect. I mean that's the way it is for me. And it's a funny diagnosis because it's the only medical diagnosis where they diagnose what you can do, not what you can't do. So, for example, if I go to the hospital with a broken arm and the doctor says, well, your leg works, that's your diagnosis. It's kind of what it is. It's like, I don't have a problem seeing the near. I got a problem. Yeah, you're nearsighted. That's your problem, is all you can see is the near. And I begin to wonder, how many of us are spiritually nearsighted? Like, we see everything going on. Like I've got my kids, got my new baby, got my life, my job, my career, my house. Like, I see all this perfectly. I just can't see what's going on out here. I can't see what God's doing out here because I'm so consumed with seeing everything down here. Now, here's the problem. In your notes, you can't reach what you can't see. If you can't see it, you're not going to reach it. You're not going to make a difference if you can't see it. And let me take it a step further. You don't feel responsible for what you don't see. So why is sex trafficking the number one problem in the world? Because we don't do anything, because we can't see it, because it's underground, it's hidden. It's done in the shadows, it's done in secret. So we don't see it, so we don't really feel that responsible to do anything about it. I used to feel sorry for the kids in Africa because I'd watch TV and the commercial would come on, but now I watch Netflix, right? So I just don't have the passion for the kids in Africa anymore because Netflix doesn't put that commercial up. How do you know when you become spiritually nearsighted? It's the question I asked last week. If God answered all of your prayers, like if God answered every single one of your prayers, everything on your prayer list, would it change the world or just change you? Do all your prayers fit in nearsightedness, or do you have any prayers that are in the farsighted? Where are your prayers? See, if we're not careful, we're going to end up like the disciples. We have a whole town coming to find Jesus, and we're thinking about lunch. We're thinking about what we want, what we like, what we need, our life. And we totally miss the point of the mission that we're on. So here's the question as we close. What is Jesus seeing? What is Jesus seeing? And the answer is he's seeing the lost. The Bible is clear. Luke 15, Luke 19, Jesus is distracted by the lost. Anytime you've lost something, you're not thinking about the found. How many of you ever lost your keys? You're not walking around the house thinking, well, at least I know where the couch is. No, like, you don't think about the things that are found when something's lost. All you think about is the lost. No, God loves the found, but he's thinking about the lost. He's distracted by, like, God's glad you're here. But you need to realize we gather on Sunday not for the people that are here. We gather on Sunday for the people that are not here yet. See, the Christian organization is the only organization in the world that was not created for the members, but created for the non-members. So we don't come here on Sunday for us. We come here on behalf of those who are not here yet because we are on mission. And God is thinking about the lost. Jesus said a good shepherd will actually leave the 99 that are found to go look for the one that's lost. If you ever lost anything of value, it's scary. I've got a 2-year-old son and an 11-year-old son. My 11-year-old last fall had a field trip to Legoland. I brought my 2-year-old with us, and we went to that area of Legoland where they got that playground with all the nets and all the slides, and it's a pretty extensive playground. There's only one way in and one way out. And so I was sitting up by, the entrance so that, I could watch, make sure my son didn't leave. And I let my 2-year-old, because he's a pretty tough kid, run around with my 11-year-old and all of his classmates, and they're all running through the maze and ropes and slides, and they're having a great time. And then all of a sudden, I see my son and his classmates hanging out up by the front, kind of taking a break, and the baby's not with them. And I'm like, okay, he's around here somewhere, and I'm sitting there for a minute, and now it's like 3 minutes go by, and 3 minutes for a lost child feels like an eternity. I'm starting to freak out a little bit. I'm like, dude, where's your brother? Where's your brother? I don't know. He's in there somewhere. Go find your brother. And so I get all of his class, like, listen, you guys, you're going to go find the baby. Like, all of you, like, different directions. You each take a different path. You go find the baby, and you bring him out. And I enlisted all of these kids to help me find my lost son. I'm like, you're going to find my lost son. You're going to go in there. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to guard the exit. You're going to find him. And so they all run off, and they're running all throughout this playground and this maze. And all of a sudden, I look over to the right, and there's one of my son's classmates sitting on the bench eating ice cream. Can I tell you, I was a little irritated, to say the least. I'm like, what are you doing eating ice cream? My son is lost. You get out there and you find the baby, find the 2-year-old. You don't eat ice cream until you find this kid and you bring him back to me. And 7 minutes, like he was gone out of my view for 7 minutes feels like hours for a lost 2-year-old. And they finally bring him out. And I tell you, when they brought that kid back, all of the class were like rallying and excited. And I'm like, I loved every single person in that class. I'll buy all of you ice cream right now. Like, we'll go to the Lego store. All of you get $100 Lego sets. $100 set for you, $100 set for you. I would do anything for those kids in that moment because they helped me find my lost son. I wonder how many times God is irritated because we're sitting on the bench eating ice cream, while our lost brother and sister is out there. And God's like, what are you doing? Like, go get your brother. Go get your sister. Bring him to me. Bring him home. Can we go get lunch, God? I mean, imagine if my 11-year-old during that time, like all of his friends are looking for his brother and I'm freaking. Imagine if my 11-year-old came to me, Dad, can we go get some ice cream? I'm kind of bored looking. Like, what? Your brother's lost and you want to go get ice cream? And yet, how many of us do that in Christianity all the time? Let's go get some ice cream, God. And God's thinking about, like, he loves you. He's glad you're found. He's thinking about the lost. So we're here to complete the Great Commission. That's our mission. So the question is, what is my part? Let me make it very, very simple. What is my part? Sharing with those in my world, not the world, my world. It's a big difference. Because what I don't want you to do is walk out of here overwhelmed today. I used to get overwhelmed with messages like this. How am I going to win the world to Christ? There's so many people out there. Like, there's billions of people and only one of me. What am I going to do? And I'd get overwhelmed. And when you get overwhelmed, you don't do anything. No. We're not called to win the world to Christ. We're called to win our world to Christ. My world, my neighbors, my coworkers, the people that I'm in relationship with. And we're going to teach you how to do that next week. There was a guy in Luke chapter 8. Jesus changed his life, healed him. He wanted to be a disciple. Jesus, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to go wherever you go. And here's what Jesus said to him. No, go back home. Go back home. I want you to go back to your world. Just go back to your world. Go back to your neighbors. Go back to your coworkers. Go back to the people in your world and just tell people how much God has done for you. Again, that's what witnessing is all about. So the man went all over town telling people how much Jesus had done for him. People are more ready to listen than we're ready to share. It's one of the things we learned from Joachim last week from Sweden. If you missed that message, watch it online. Because what happens so often, when we finally get the courage to tell somebody about Jesus, they look at it like, why did you wait? I've been waiting. I don't know how many stories I've heard from people that said, when I finally got the courage to tell someone about Jesus, they said, listen, this morning I just told God, if you're real, send somebody today. Like, they're more ready to listen than we're ready to share. Think about it like this. When you get to heaven, there's only 2 things in heaven you're not going to be able to do. Only 2. Because in heaven, you can do a lot of things. You can eat food, you can sing, you can worship, you can sleep, you can travel, fellowship, hang out with friends. There's all sorts of things you're going to be able to do in heaven, but only 2 things you will not be able to do in heaven: sin, obviously, and evangelize the lost, because nobody will be lost. So let me ask you a question. Which of those 2 things do you think God leaves you on earth to do? Because when you gave your life to Christ, he didn't take you right away. And so let me leave you with one verse and then one question. If you'll buy into this message, it's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for you. Jesus put it like this: if you insist on saving your life, like if you just think about lunch all the time instead of the town that's coming to know Jesus, if you're just thinking about yourself and what you want to do and your family and your needs and your nearsightedness, you're going to lose. But the people who throw away their lives for my sake and for the sake of the good news, sake of the gospel, they're going to know what it really means to live. You're going to get more out of it than anyone else. So I'm going to leave you with this question. It's a question that I think you heard a couple weeks ago in our 6-on-6, because one of our board members who spoke says that every time he gets a chance, and it's simply this: who's going to be in heaven because of you? Who's going to be in heaven because of you? Who's going to walk up to you in heaven, and when they see you, they're going to say, thank you. I would not be here right now if it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for you, I would not be standing here right now. Who's going to be in heaven? Because we're on mission as followers of Christ. Would you close your eyes? Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we come before you right now, and God, we ask that you give us vision, that you would open our eyes to see that there are people ready to know you. And they're just waiting on us to share the good news with them of how incredible it is to be in a relationship and all the good things that you've done in our life. God, open our eyes. Give us the vision to see, to realize that heaven and hell are real and they're forever and they're permanent, and we can do something about it now. So call us to mission in the name of Jesus.